The greatest Counter-Strike player to ever play the game has finally returned to reclaim his throne. S1mple is back. He is playing in a team called BC Game, which is very interesting and a very unexpected team for him to go to. I decided to look at his game and see how much of his skill and how much of his prestige is still there and how much of that has washed away in the years that he has been gone. S1mple is often regarded for his incredible mechanics, especially his aim. And looking at his gameplay now, he still definitely has that incredible aim that everyone knows him for. Starting in the pistol round of this game against Big, where they actually end up losing, you can see that S1mple gets a very flashy 3K, getting all the kills here. Some of the shots, especially the first one, are very difficult to hit, and it just kind of showcases the amount of skill that he still has and the amount of aim that he still has. And that's something that I don't think anybody really expected to go away. You can see here in this Tabson death as well, where S1mple is the guy that boosts in connector to get this kill, just how quick he dies and how little of a chance he actually has of trying to get this kill, including this last round where he gets this kill on the player peeking party. This headshot is very difficult to hit. You'll see oppers miss this all the time, and the fact that S1mple just is so precise on these tiny little body parts that you can barely even make out just showcases how incredibly skilled he still is, how that's not really going to be a factor that limits him and his performance now that he's in a different game. However, one thing that I do think that I'm starting to notice with S1mple, and this is kind of just everybody, this isn't really a S1mple only nerf, it's kind of an everybody nerf, is struggling to deal with the CS2 movement that we have, where running and moving is still more accurate than it was in Go, or at least it feels that way. And so you'll see on some of the shots that he has to try and take where people are swinging, it's very hard for him to get that kill because the speed of the swing with the ping advantage and everything else, all the disadvantages that we've talked about with sub-tick are still definitely making it very difficult for him. It's also clear on when they miss their run boost here that this shot is just very difficult with how weirdly everybody is like stopping and moving, and these sorts of just like weird movement techs is something that is going to take him longer to get used to compared to what Go was, where it's very refined. I think CS2 still has a lot of rough edges that S1mple is trying to figure out exactly how he needs to position his crosshair or deal with a swing, and he hasn't quite gotten there yet. Another thing that I've noticed from S1mple is that there's still some meta things that he's behind on. Obviously, he hasn't been back in the game for that long. It's only been a few months. So there's still some time for him to get acclimated to what is in the meta now compared to what was in the meta, 4 years ago, or however long it's been since he was actively playing. One example that comes to mind is on the second round where he's trying to do the jump throw nade to land T-steps. This was something that was very common in CSGO. Probably the most common thing for an opera to do in CSGO was this jump throw nade. However, with the way the BC Game is playing and the whole principle behind throwing the jump throw nade is the T-steps molly. In Go, the T-steps molly would have to be smoked. Like, you would have to smoke that molly so that you could progress forward, or else you're losing 30 health trying to run through that every single round. In CS2, unless you're throwing a very specific run boost Molotov, that's not really the case. You can get through a CT molly, which are so much smaller, with only losing 8 to 12 health. So doing the jump throw nade is kind of pointless, because most players will just run through those sloppy mollies, and it really has no effect. When you have the best long spawn, in CSGO, a very common play was to go, rush all the way through long to tree, and then you could get to a particular angle on the little triangle box thing in long. And with the triangle box and long, if the CTs have the best spawn, they will beat the Ts there every single time and Go. And 2, with players running through the CT molly, that timing can be a lot more tight. Of course, the CTs do still win, but it's very, very close. And so that shot comes a lot earlier than I think most people would expect. You see S1mple do this twice in this game, and it's not a bad play. Like, if you just take the play in a vacuum and look at it in terms of Counter-Strike fundamentals, it's not flawed at all. Even in 2, it's not flawed. But it is more out of the meta now than it was in Go. And I think it just kind of showcases that S1mple is still trying to catch up to what is the meta compared to what was the meta when he was actively the best player in the world. Another key thing that I'm noticing from S1mple that is kind of a bad habit for him is that he will sometimes get onto angles and just stand still and hold the angle, kind of like a statue, or at least that's how we've always talked about it, is like statue holding, where you're not moving, you're just holding your crosshair, waiting for people to come. In Go, that was fine to do because everything was relatively even. Of course, there was still Peeker's advantage, but it wasn't to such an unbelievable level that you had no chance of winning static duels like that. In CS2, however, with how big the Peeker's advantage is, it's actually very difficult, and you're putting yourself at a pretty big disadvantage trying to hold like that. So what I would tell S1mple as a coach is that when you get onto these angles, like in connector here, instead of standing statically and waiting for this peak, you should be moving, jiggling side to side, trying to get the crosshair of whoever's peeking you slightly off to give yourself the time to actually be able to make the adjustment and find this kill, because a good player that's pre-aiming this position and you're just standing statically, you're probably losing that fight 9 times out of 10. The last thing that I'm pretty concerned about while watching S1mple in this game is that I'm starting to see a lot of the classic tier 2 star habits appear. S1mple has always been a very aggressive player, and he's always made these sorts of movements, so I don't think it's necessarily alarming, because this is kind of just how his brand has been for his entire career. But I am starting to see some moments where he is really pushing it with what he can get away with, just because the players in tier 2 aren't as sharp as the players in tier 1. For example, if we look at this pistol round, I highlighted it earlier, that the kills that he's getting are incredible in terms of the mechanical skill. However, the positioning of where he is at when he's out in the open like this is very, very alarming, because this player that whiffs on him, if this is, say, the Mongols, for example, S1mple is not getting a 3K here. He's getting the first kill, and this guy is trading it as soon as he starts missing, because he's standing completely out in the open. He's not really jiggling that hard. He's pretty static on how he's fighting as well. And so if you put, Maos or Mongols or Vitality, if that's Rops, dude, you're dead, And this is a bad habit that I'm starting to notice, that he will get over aggressive sometimes trying to find the equalizer or trying to find extra. Another example that I noticed in this game was round 9, when he gets flashed off in bathroom, and instead of just taking the safe route where you either back out through long or dropping your smoke and utilizing that to escape back into main bath, he tries to strafe across with the op. That's a very, very hard fight. There's so many different angles that you've opened yourself up to, especially after you've been blinded and you don't know exactly where people are at. That is a massive overpeak and a misplay, in my opinion. I think that's very, very difficult for anybody, not S1mple, literally anybody, to try and pull off. And it kind of showcases this mindset that he has where I'm playing against players that are worse than me, I can do what I want. And as he gets higher and higher and starts competing at higher and higher levels, which I'm sure he will, obviously his stats look amazing, teams know who he is, they know his impact. I'm sure if BC Game don't build a roster around him, somebody will come and grab him at some point. But if he continues to showcase these things at the next level, I think that it's going to bite him in the ass more than it has in tier 2. That's not to say that S1mple has started to become a dumb player, by the way. S1mple is one of the smartest players to ever touch the game, and if you look here at round 10, where he doesn't peak, the reason why he doesn't peak is because he knows the Opper is playing towards connector. So searching for this kill in short is actually going to be detrimental and get S1mple killed. He knows that, so he decides to play this more patient. But then immediately after, you see him try and get hero again on the monster prop, where he tries to creep up and get the kill on a monster guy and escape. But that's, again, like that sort of play, that's in S1mple's nature. I would not say that's a misplay. They're already down at a pretty bad disadvantage. S1mple has the best gun in the game. He's in position to try and make some magic happen, and he goes for it. I think that's kind of the hair of what makes S1mple so great. So I would hate to see him lose that element of his game, but I like that in that round, it's significantly more selective where, hey, the Opper is on this location, I'm aware of it, or I should be aware of it. Let me not take that fight, something that I wish I would have seen the round before when he didn't over-search in middle. And then, okay, now that everything's kind of screwed, let me go hero mode now and see if I can pull this round back for my team. If S1mple starts to play more like that and have a little bit more patience again, then I think we're going to see him rise to being one of the best players in the world once again. To conclude my thoughts about this game where S1mple lost against Big, I think it's very clear that S1mple definitely still has the form and the skill to be one of the best players on Earth. I think the main thing that's holding S1mple back right now is that he's been out of the game for multiple years. He's trying to get caught up to a brand new game, which took many players months of adjustment to get, acclimated to. He has to learn the meta of that new game, because that has evolved significantly from when it came out 2 years ago to where it's at now. He has to catch up on the movement that you need to be able to perform in this game compared to perform and go. He also has to get used to the lifestyle of Counter-Strike again, the VRS ecosystem, which is significantly more difficult in my opinion because of how much you have to play. And so I think for S1mple himself, he still has everything necessary to be the best or one of the best in the world, but he needs more time to get used to the new ecosystem that he has came back into. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a comment so I know to do more. Make sure that you guys are following Marsborne. We are the best USA only team in the world at the moment, and we are trying to prove that we deserve to be in international spaces. Make sure that you are following our journey. Make sure you are following our content and our team. That way you can stay up to date with one of the best projects that is currently happening in Counter-Strike.